Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. Today we have an open Q&A. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things. So we will be dotting about a little bit, I guess. We will have some questions on this show, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. If you've not watched it yet, it really is good. After that, we've got some questions about A Song of Ice and Fire more broadly, some questions about Lord of the Rings. We will dot about a bit, so it's not going to be exactly structured like that. But let's just get straight into it, I think. Laura Dragon saying, "Good evening, Robert. I hope you're keeping well and warm." I am, thank you. I have been avoiding A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms so I can binge the whole series once it's out, which gives me a good chance. Actually, thank you for the spoiler warning. I will be talking about stuff in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms that may happen in the next two episodes, by which I mean I'm going to talk about the books. Usual policy here. Book spoilers, fine. The books have been out for years. I don't have any spoilers for the TV show. I haven't seen them in advance. I don't know what's going to happen. I think they're going to stick quite closely to the books. But that is your spoiler warning. It's got me thinking, says Laura Dragon, about the possibilities there are for interesting stories set between The Hedge Knight and Game of Thrones, places where Duncan Egg's adventures can intersect with the broader story of the realm. I wonder, or in fact, I hope we get much more from Dawn and the Vale specifically. Their cultures are fascinating to me. What would you like to see in future Duncan Egg stories? Well, Ira Parker, the showrunner for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, has said that George R. R. Martin has given him outlines of the Duncan Egg stories to come. And it's not 100% clear. He said, I think, 10 to 12, but it's not 100% clear whether that's plus the three stories we already have or including the three stories we already have. In any event, previously George R. R. Martin has given different numbers for how many stories we're going to get, but the highest number he's had so far was 12. He is going to tell these stories all the way through to the end of Duncan Egg's life. So, what do I hope? Well, personally, I think it matches the idea of the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms to be going to all seven kingdoms or nine kingdoms. I did a video on it. Um, I would like to see all the different areas of Westeros and just get a little bit of their culture. We've been to the Riverlands and the Reach so far. We're going to go almost certainly to the north. George R. R. Martin has muttered about doing one in Dawn. So certainly we're going to go to different places. I would like to go to all the different places. We do have a bit of a hint, though, in that he has told us the names of the stories to come. And we know that we've got the three that we've got already, plus the She-Wolves of Winterfell. That's just a working title. It's not going to be the end title, but they're going to Winterfell. The Village Hero, which is set in the Riverlands, almost certainly a Bracken versus Blackwood story. Then we also get the Sellsword. Do they even go to Essos? It's not clear. The Champion. Does he win a tourney? Possibly. The Kingsguard. We know he does join the Kingsguard. And the Lord Commander. He becomes Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. So those are the kind of the touchstones of the stories that we've got so far. I think in order to tell the story of Duncan Egg, we definitely have to have the Great Council. We definitely have to have whatever on earth is going on with the Lannisters and Rohan Weber. We'll come back to that. We definitely have to have the whole Jenny of Oldstones and House Baratheon incident. We definitely need to have Summerhall. So what I want is to tell their whole story, and I want their story to be covering as much of the Seven Kingdoms as possible. Lord Medici, isn't it weird that Baylor Breakspear, the heir to the Iron Throne, is married to a Dondarian? It is at best a second-tier house, and far less influential or rich second-tier house than houses like Hightower, Rain, Royce, or Dane, and it has a history of hostility against Dawn, at a time when the Seven Kingdoms were trying to bring Dawn into the fold. Was it a marriage of love? Because it doesn't seem to make sense politically. It's a really interesting question, and not the first time I've been asked, because it does kind of stand out. So, Baelor Breakspear is the heir to the throne. Why would you marry him to, and I think you're right, a third tier house? It's not one of the Lord's Paramount houses. It's also not one of the clearly second most powerful houses. You listed a few there, but yeah, the High Towers, they're not one of the Lords Paramount, but they're clearly very important. The Velaryons, even someone like House Bolton or the Mandaleys in the north, clearly very strong and important. The Dondarians, they're a good house. They're strong, but they're not right up at that level. So what was going on? Well, I will do a whole video, and I haven't quite worked out the title. It's something like the Targaryen's marriage strategy. It's it's quite interesting for me, at least, who they choose to marry and why over time, because it does shift. They started out marrying Velaryons, Baratheons, and then it kind of shifts a little bit. So by the time we get to Aegon the Fifth, then they're marrying not those families, but other families. Here, though, House Dondarrion is probably the least powerful house that any of the important Targaryens. We don't know about the lower down the hierarchy Targaryens, but any of the important Targaryens marry into. So why is that? Well, we have to understand the role of House Dondarrion. House Dondarrion are what is known as a Marcher Lord house. They're in the Stormlands. And the Marcher Lords, they go from the Stormlands all the way across to the Reach. They are the lords of the lands that border Dawn, and they have for thousands of years been fighting Dawn. Now, you're right. The king is married to a Martell. At this moment in time, the court is it shifts over the few years, but it's split into a pro-Dornish and an anti-Dornish faction because Diren the Good, who is the king at the moment in the Hedge Knight, he was married to a Dornish woman, and a lot of Dornish people were involved in court. Maekar is married to a Dane, for example, and a lot of Dornish people are in court, and a lot of people who have been fighting against the Dornish for thousands of years are a little bit upset about this. Now, not that long ago, 13 years before the Hedge Knight, we had the first Blackfire Rebellion. And one of the points that they could get a little bit of leverage, try to draw a line between two different sides in court at that time was, are you pro or anti-Dawn? So, if you're the king and you're trying to mend a broken realm, you know that you're married to a Dornish woman. You've married one of your other sons off to another Dornish woman. You're trying to bring everything together. What do you do? Which families are there that are most anti-Dawn that you can try to bring into the fold? House Dondarrion is one of the key possibilities. So if you marry into House Dondarrion, or you get House Dondarrion to marry into you, that means that they, one of the most influential Marcher Lords, are now on your side. And that enmity which was there between the Marcher Lords and the Dornish probably will start to reduce. And the enmity which is there in court with people who are trying to say, well, we've got this faction and that faction, that can also start to diminish. So perhaps this was a love match. We do not know. But I think it is an incredibly pragmatic marriage. He's not marrying somebody from the Blackfire faction, but he is marrying somebody from the sort of the peripheral, that side of the house, trying to bring everything together. So, yes, on first glance, it is an odd match, but when you dig into the politics of the time, it kind of makes sense. Lord Bodici also asked, how does a trial of 7 even work? Does it go on until all 7 fighters are dead? Isn't this a bit much, given how the charge being pressed against Dunk does not even incur capital punishment? A fight until first blood would seem more proportional. Well, perhaps. We only have 2 clear, written about examples of a trial of 7. One was with Maegor the Cruel, when he landed in King's Landing and claimed the throne, and he sort of said, well, I'll get 6 allies. You get some allies, and let's just fight this out. Let's work out whose side the gods are on. And he won. He only just won. He was knocked insensible at death's door, but he survived. Then we get this story we've got in the Hedge Knight. So our understanding of all of the rules and technicalities is kind of limited to those 2 examples. But it seems to be that this is like the next level up. To make it even more perfectly clearly the god's will, you're not just having a trial of champions, you're having 7 on each side. 7 is the holy number, the faith of the 7. One warrior for each of the aspects of the one god. So that's what's going on here. It's but supposed to be more likely to bring about the god's true justice. How do the technicalities work? Well, the first thing which we see in the Hedge Knight is that if you, as the defendant, cannot find 6 knights to fight on your side, then clearly the gods aren't on your side, and you lose, and you're deemed to be guilty. Assuming you do get 6 people on your side, then it is a fight not to first blood, but it is a fight until the other side is defeated in some way. Now, what does defeated mean? Sort of lying unconscious on the ground is defeated. Yielding is defeated. Killed is defeated. So once all 7 of the other side are gone, then you've won. The thing with Maegor was that he was the last man standing. He wasn't even standing, but he had survived, and everyone else had gone. And so it's like, okay, I guess that means that he must have won then. It's slightly different in the Hedge Knight. I won't spoil it for those who are watching the TV show, but if you yield, basically, if you yield, you're out. If you're knocked unconscious, you're out. If you're killed, you're out. And it's last man standing. Catherine Furseth saying, I have so many questions related to the Dunk and Egg show. First of all, the prophecy in episode 3. What did you make of it? It gives me shivers when the woman said, and all who know you shall rejoice in your dying. Is this a clear indication and support of the Aegon V went mad, or was possessed by dragon dreams of hatching dragons idea? What did you make of the rest of the fortune reading for both Dunk and Egg? Okay, so let's start. We'll do Egg first and then Dunk. So this is the fortune for Egg. You shall be king and die in a hot fire, and worms shall feed on your ashes, and all who know you shall rejoice in your dying. Now, Dunk finds this quite hilarious at the time. The first thing which will have grabbed Egg is you shall be king. He was not expecting to be king. He was the 4th son of a 4th son. There were a lot of people between him and the Iron Throne. I think it was last week, actually, we tried to work out where in Line to the Throne we were. Happened to have Jane Magician in the chat, who was also trying to work it out. I think we came to 12th or maybe 10th. It's not 100% clear, but he's a long way down. A lot of people would have had to die in order for him to inherit. And if any of them had had children, that would just push him even further down the line of succession. He did not expect to be king. It's not even he did not expect to be king. It's like, that's not a thing. Why would I be king? There's so many people ahead of me. So that will be the first thing, the shock for him, this idea that he will be king. Then you get the bit that we, as readers, know that he's going to be king. The bit that we, as readers, then get a little bit worked up about is this last bit. You will die in a hot fire, we know. He will die at the tragedy of Summerhall. Worms shall feed on your ashes. Perhaps there's something there. I did double check the subtitles. It is WORMS, not WYRMS. So he was trying to hatch dragons. Could he have succeeded? It's not beyond the realms of possibility. But that's not the bit I'm going to focus on, because that is a little bit too vague. All who know you shall rejoice in your dying. So the exact circumstances of the tragedy at Summerhall are still a mystery. George R. R. Martin has deliberately kept it a mystery. What we do know is that Egg was trying to hatch dragon eggs. We also know that he brought in pyromancers and wildfire. And we know that there was a huge blazing inferno that killed a huge amount of people, including both Dunk and Egg. The clear implication is that something happened. Fire got out of control. It burned everyone down. So why, though, would everybody, let's just check the wording again, would everybody who knows him rejoice in his dying? So a lot of people have, I wouldn't say jumped to the conclusion, but taken, I think, is the face value conclusion that this means that he, like other Targaryens, went a little bit crazy. We know that he became obsessed with hatching dragon eggs. Is that why everyone rejoiced when he died? Because he was just like a bad Targaryen? Is the Dunk that we know and love, is the Egg that we know and love just going to turn crazy? Maybe. But I do have another thought, which I think explains this even better. And the first point to make is that all those who knew you or know you shall rejoice in your dying. I would put it to you that the people who knew and loved Egg died with him. So the other people who are left were the people who were rejoicing. This isn't the people who actually really knew and cared about him. This is other people. So how is it that these other people might not like Egg? Because he seems adorable. Well, we have to understand his history. After the Hedge Knight, which already, and they've done a really good job of this, I think, on the show, has started to show a dividing line between the rich and powerful and the small folk. And Egg is one of those people who is comfortable as part of the small folk. He seems very happy there, chatting away with people, watching the puppet show. That seems to be him in his element. There are others we see. Raymond Fossaway seems fine. Lionel Baratheon seems to love hanging around. He doesn't seem to spend huge amounts of time with the other lords at all. He seems to be wanting to be there, drinking, dancing, getting up to all kinds of debauchery and some tug of war. So we're already seeing this kind of dividing line. which was helpfully, I think, shown by which side of the Trial of Seven people were on. This became, it's not exact, but broadly, who are the people who are comfortable among the small folk and who are the people who are not? So with Dunk, we've got Lionel Baratheon, we've got Raymond Fossaway, we've got Baelor Breakspear. On the other side, we've got those Kingsguard. We've got Aerion. We've got Stefan Fossaway. The dividing line is quite clear here, and that carries on through Egg's life. As he grows up, he becomes known. He's sort of outed himself, to be honest, in the third Dunk and Egg story, but he becomes known as this prince who is out there hanging out with the small folk. He's seen as like kind of feral. He's not like raised as a prince. He doesn't understand how like things ought to be. And so when he rather unexpectedly becomes king, a lot of the lords are not really on his side. There was a great council, if you remember, and although he was, if you look at the family trees and you say, okay, well, we're not gonna go with Arion's son because he's just a baby and he's called Magor, and if he's anything like Arion, we don't want him. We're not going to go with Diren's daughter because the word we're given is simple. Maybe she was a dragon dreamer too. We do not know, but she was a woman. So they're not going to go there. Then you get Aemon, who was a maester, who should not have inherited because he disavowed all of that when he became a maester. Now, the lords came to him to say, okay, could you just like step aside from your vows and become king? Because we do not want Egg as king. Aemon obviously refused that. But when Egg therefore became king, because there were pretty much no alternatives, then they were not on his side. And what followed, he actually became king in the middle of a very long winter. It'd been going for 3 years. There's going to be another 3 years after this. He tried his best to manage it. He came in a really bad time. As king, people are starving. How does he help? He tried to send some food to the north. He got criticized for that. You're taking food away from these people. Then what followed was just this series of rebellions, one after another, which he had to deal with. And eventually he thought, okay, I need to actually make a difference here. And he's tried to push through these reforms, giving the small folk more rights. The lords hated him for it. He made even more enemies. So he thought, okay, what shall I do? I'll marry my children off to influential lords around the land. Good plan, Egg. But then every single one of those matches fell through before they actually came through. Duncan, his eldest, he was actually engaged to one of Lionel Baratheon's daughters. But then he met Jenny Goldstones, fell in love. There was actually nearly a civil war over it. Lionel Baratheon was appeased, but not happy. Also, the House Redwine. Fun fact, the Egg's youngest was engaged to a young Olenna Redwine, who we know as Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns. Turns out, however, he was gay, and so that got called off. She decided to call that one off, and then he died anyway. His other two children married each other. The whole thing just fell apart. Lords of the Land hated him. he decided that the only way that he could regain control was to get dragons. He was trying to do good all this time, I suspect. He was trying to deliver reforms, trying to make life better for everyone in the country, for the small folk. But the lords hated him for it. He thought, the only way I can do this, the only way I can get them into line, remember, there was every year another small rebellion somewhere, is to hatch some dragon eggs. So he pushed all of his energy into that. And then Inferno. He dies, his son dies, his best friend dies. All those who are left rejoiced. We know that almost immediately, all those reforms that Egg made, they were just rolled back. Everyone who knew him, who was left, rejoiced. Not because they hated Egg, they didn't like him, but because of what he had done in taking away their powers and giving it to the small folk. So that's my take on the Egg prophecy, and I think this is a. I wasn't sure about it when I first saw it, but now I do really like it because it adds this extra layer to what we've got. Egg's story is not one, I think, of a sweet innocent child descending into madness and Targaryen stuff. It's of a sweet innocent child growing up to become a king who cares about the people he rules, and his lords hate him for it. And the more he tries to do the right thing, the more enemies he makes, so that when he eventually dies, all those who actually knew him, because the small folk didn't know him, it's only the lords around him who knew him, they rejoiced. I think this is a tragedy, but a tragedy because Dunk and Egg are so pure, in a way. Okay, let's go to a couple of questions in the chat. Ginger Bearded Geek, if you had to pick 7 champions to defend you in a trial of 7, who would they be? Must be alive and in Westeros at the start of A Song of Ice and Fire Book 1, Game of Thrones. This is the kind of thing that I find really hard. I have to admit, just trying to think of 7 off the top of my head live. I'm going to throw this one to the chat. I will give you a few starters. Let me know in the chat what you think. But at the start of Book 1 of A Song of Ice and Fire, you definitely have to have Sir Barristan. In terms of the best fighters who are there, I mean, I think Brienne is definitely up there. I think Loras is definitely up there. I think Jaime is definitely up there. Whether you'd want him on your side or not, the Mountain is definitely up there. Given what we saw, someone like Oberyn or Bronn would also be up there. But I'd love to know what you think in the chat. Who would be your 7? Marcus W. Montgomery. I think the death of dragons or Fire and Blood is at the Wall. Okay, by that do you mean in A Song of Ice and Fire, where the dragons will die at the Wall? In which case, yeah, I mean, I don't think the Wall itself is not going to kill dragons. As far as we can tell, the Wall does prevent dragons from crossing, but it won't kill them. The question is there somebody there who could kill the dragons? I think the dragons will probably die south of the Wall, just my general take. I was hoping the chat would do this. People are already throwing out ideas. Lord Commodore saying, books or show, Garland Tyrell, that's a good shout. The Hound, Arthur Dane, Maeve Murphy, yes. If Arthur Dane was alive, definitely he was. He was the greatest fighter of his generation. If we're just going technically by the beginning of the book 1, then he wasn't there. Erin's son X, Jamie's the first on my mind. Andrew K saying Oberyn needs someone to fight dirty if need be and be versatile. Yep, I get that. Matua Oberyn all day. Oh, Indy's gone a whole one. Coleen, half hand. Jamie, Barriston, Brienne, Sandor, Oberyn, Ongi. Yeah, possibly. I never know how to pronounce that. Probably Ongi, perhaps. 1-1, Lord Commodore says. Yeah, 1-1 would be quite cool. Sandok the Shadow, Tormund. Yeah, there's a lot of good ideas. I mean, I think we're sort of in the same place. A drunken Thoros of Myr, says Jojo Malolo. Yeah, a drunken Thoros of Myr does seem to be pretty impressive. Right, let's go to a question from Dunk. Yes, I didn't know he had a prophecy too. You should be richer than a Lannister. I thought was fantastic because it's one of those ones that if my interpretation is correct, then it's slightly subverting what you first think. So this is not saying the Lannisters. He's not going to be richer than the Lannisters. It is a Lannister. So it's just one Lannister we're talking about. And who, for most of this period, is the Lannister Lord? He's a guy called Gerald Lannister. Now, we have a link. In book 2, which will be season 2 of A Knight of Seven Kingdoms, Dunk meets Lady Rohan Weber. Now, their chemistry is quite clear, let's put it that way. But for local political reasons, she can't marry him. Nothing serious can happen. She has to marry Eustace Osgrey, the local neighbouring lord. Dunk kind of seems to accept this and go away. He famously cuts off her braid, which some people have said is symbolic of him doing something else. I'll leave that to your imaginations. If you wish to go down that route, the books aren't clear. Anyway, he leaves her, heads up north, but the man that she marries is a lot older than her and dies, and she remarries, and the person she remarries is Sir Gerald Lannister. She becomes the Lady of Castle Rock, and she has 4 sons with Gerald Lannister, and we're told that he loved her hugely. We're also told that after having her 4th child with him, that she disappeared in mysterious circumstances. That's all we know. It's the kind of thing George R. R. Martin writes when he's kind of putting a placeholder. We'll come back to this. We'll come back to this with something else. The fact it is her, the fact that it is around the time of the Dunk and Egg stories, and we haven't been yet to the Westerlands, makes me wonder whether Dunk and Egg are involved in this in some way. If they are, it has to open up the possibility that Dunk and Lady Rohan Weber, Lady Rohan Lannister, as she was then, elope in some way. This would add to the egg annoying all of the noble lords of the land kind of trope that we've got, but also answers this particular prophecy. Because if Gerald Lannister loved Rohan, then he will have viewed her as his greatest treasure. If Dunk takes her from him in some way, then he has her. He is then richer than the Lannister, a Lannister. That, I think, is the way I'm going to interpret it. Until I hear something else, that's how I'm going to interpret this. I do not think that Dunk is going to become hugely rich. I'm sure he will become better off, but I don't think he's going to become hugely rich so that everyone goes, wow, Dunk, he's just richer than a Lannister. I don't think that's how this should be interpreted. I think there is another level, and I think it's to do with what true riches are. Marcus W. Montgomery saying, no, the book Death of Dragons is at the wall. It's the only reason I think Jaqen allowed himself to be captured and sent to the Night's Watch. So, picking up on the Jaqen point, my view, I did a video on this a long time ago, but I think that Jaqen allowed himself to be captured I think you're right, in order to be part of that caravan in the Night's Watch going to the war. I don't think it was in order to join the Night's Watch, because if he wanted to go to there, he could just turn up. He's not going to turn someone away. He could just turn up and say, I've come to join the Night's Watch. So I think what he is doing there is becoming a part of that caravan heading north, because he is hired to kill somebody else within that caravan. Who? Well, it's not Arya. It's not Gendry. But there was one other person who was supposed to be a part of that caravan, and that's Ned Stark. And if you go back to my video on this one, you can get all of the logic behind this. But I think it is beyond doubt that Littlefinger knew about the Faceless Men. We have evidence of that. He knew how much they would cost. We have evidence of that. And we knew that there was no way on this planet that he wanted Ned Stark to make it to the north. Not just because, okay, then Ned Stark gets back home and safe, but because Ned would then tell Cat that Littlefinger betrayed him. And Cat would never forgive Littlefinger. And Littlefinger was obsessed with Cat, and he could not allow that to happen. So that's why I think he was there. When you say in the book Death of Dragons, I understand. So there is a book called The Death of Dragons, which we think tells you how to kill a dragon in some way. I think that is in Old Town, which is why Jaqen H'ghar reappears after he's left that wagon train. He gives up on the idea. The moment that they're no longer heading up to the wall, he gives up on the idea. He doesn't carry on going there. He goes the other direction, changes his face, and goes to Old Town, and immediately tries to get access to the secret places in the Citadel. So I think the book, The Death of Dragons, is in the Citadel. James Bordus, thank you, very generous. Thank you very much. Saying, hello, Robert. I have a critique of George R. R. Martin, and I think it's reasonable, and I'm wondering if you could respond. As an English teacher, I find that despite generally excellent world building, George tends to hide behind myth and mists of time. Fair or no? I mean, I think I would probably want you to unpack that a little bit more. But how I will interpret that is that he gives a huge amount of the backstory as legend. This happened so long ago, nobody knows exactly the details of it. So we can't. That can't possibly help other than in hints and things like that. Would it be better? And this is my kind of response. I think would it be better if the others had gone away 100, 200 years ago rather than thousands of years ago? What happened was written down in detail. Everyone knows how they were defeated. Everyone knows what they wanted. Everyone knows the exact details of the war. The sensible story then would be, when we think they're coming back, let's just get that book out and read it. Let's find out how we defeat them. George R. R. Martin doesn't like that. What he likes is the mystery. He likes this idea that you do not know, you do understand. And that lack of knowledge and understanding brings fear. He talks about this if you go to any of his, not any of them, a lot of the interviews he's done recently. He talks about this in connection with magic. And he's often asked about soft versus hard magic systems. His is a very soft magic system. He very rarely describes exactly how you got that end result. And he says that that's deliberate. He wants people not to know exactly. He thinks that if you just say, okay, well, here's the recipe. I have newt, leg of toad, whatever. Throw them all into a cauldron, stir them 3 times anti-clockwise. Say these words, you'll get this end result. The moment you do that, it becomes more processy, more sciencey. The mystery has gone. What he is trying to engender is a fear of the unknown. We simply do not know what Melisandre. I mean, this is the problem with the book taking so long, is that we've forgotten the feeling when Melisandre first does something, and it's like, well, I didn't know she could do that. Shadow baby, shadow baby assassin. What? Where's that come from? I don't know. Oh, she can see things, real things in the flames. Okay. And we sort of like add to this every single time she can do another thing. She can do another thing. What's the limit of her powers? And that's just Melisandre. He wants the mystery to be there. He wants us not to be 100% certain. He thinks that if we knew exactly what she could do, if we had her spell list, that just kind of minimizes her. You can come up with a plan for how to confront her. And this is the same with the others and the plot. The whole point is that we do not know what's going on with the others. We do not know what they want. We do not know how they were defeated last time. They're just there and they're scary. And this is why he is not showing us them much, to keep this aura of mystery. So, that's my interpretation of your question. I hope that was what you were trying to get at. Hiding behind myths and mists of time. Is it a fair comment? Yes, absolutely, he does. Does that make him a worse writer? I personally don't think so. Let's go to a question from James Boris. Part 2. This is a part 2 picking up on the myth and mists of time. So, for example, the magic system often runs into inconsistencies because he over relies on the unexplained, e.g., last kiss working without intention. Okay, so a useful clarification there. Yes, I mean, this is something that I find frustrating in trying to write and explain how magic works in this world, because I'm sure several times I've said the key things here are sacrifice and intentionality. But then there's always this: what about the first time Beric was resurrected? There was, I mean, you could argue there was a bit of sacrifice because Beric lost a bit of himself, but there wasn't any intentionality about that. Thoros wasn't intending to do that. So what was going on there? And then you get the other types of magic that seem to be completely devoid of both of those. Dragon dreams, green dreams. These are things that just happen to people. People don't seem to go to sleep saying, I really want a dragon dream. It just happens to them. Similarly with green dreams. And although both of them do seem to leave the person feeling a little bit haunted by this, there isn't a clear sacrifice. You don't have to like do any king's blood in order to that just happens. So yeah, I get the challenge. I think George R. R. Martin would argue that this is necessary for the mystery. But I absolutely recognize the inconsistencies, because whenever I try to work out how the magic system works, I always say, but then there's that time it didn't work. If you like that, you're in George R. Martin's camp. If you don't, then perhaps you're in your camp. I think both are equally valid. For me, I do quite like the mystery. Tolkien is the same. He's got a very soft magic system. Akeem Wade, do you think it's funny that the Targaryens were so worried about the Blackfires usurping them, but it ended up being the other bastard side of their family, the Baratheons? Yeah, there is an irony there. But I mean, to call them the other bastard side of their family, that was centuries ago. So they were founded. The first Baratheon was almost certainly a Targaryen bastard. The claim that Robert Baratheon had was not through the oldest Baratheon all those centuries ago. It was through his grandmother, who was another Targaryen. So, yes, there's an irony there, but I think the Baratheons, by this point, the Baratheons have moved well beyond a bastard offshoot, is my general take. I think I had another couple of questions. Sanctum Soundscapes. Was there one Battle of Dawn with one hero remembered as Azor Ahai and Last Hero, or two battles on both lands with two heroes? West at the Wall and east at the Five Forts. Well, we're back to this fog of mystery. Fog of mystery, fog of myth. We don't know. I think the idea has to be this of a monomyth that just has one mythological character who has some kind of attributes that is shared. This is the person who defeated the others. But it's remembered in different ways by different cultures. Now, there does seem to have been, or there is a legend of this Battle for the Dawn, which took place with the first Night's Watch. That's in the kind of the last hero Westerosi tradition. We don't know enough about the legends over on the other side of the world, but clearly the Long Night happened there. Almost certainly, I think the others arrived there. That does seem to imply that they needed a hero over there. I'm happy with this idea that they found their own hero, who, as much as the legends tried to present it as just one hero, it seems very clear it wasn't just one hero. The last hero set off with a band of brothers and friends. The War for the Dawn, the Battle for the Dawn, was a lot of people fighting, not just one person. So we're not just looking for one hero. The legends remember one hero, but there were actually lots of people. I think that's me caught up on the chat. Let's go to a question from Catherine Furseth. What has been your favourite thing and favourite scene in Dunk and Egg so far? I have to say that the scene where Sir Lionel knights Raymond Fossaway was great scenographic work. My favourite thing is just the feel. I can remember I went off on a little reminiscing rant before Night of the Seven Kingdoms came out. Somebody asked me what will be the thing that makes you go, yes, that works. And I can remember reminiscing about when I went to see The Fellowship of the Ring in the cinema for the first time, and when I just sort of sat back and kind of let out a deep breath. It's like, yeah, they got the feel right, and I could forgive so many details of what happened next because they got the feel right. And at some point, I couldn't put my finger exactly on when, but at some point in the first episode, I had the same thought. They've got the feel right here, haven't they? They've got the slightly whimsical idea. They've got Dunk and Egg both being these kind of wonderfully innocent characters who are just good in a world that is not good, but we're not focusing on the not good anymore. We're focusing on the good. And they got that really right. So I think that's the thing I'm happiest about. It's kind of intangible, but it's the feel that works for me. As for a moment, I mean, I love the Baylor moment when he sort of comes through and the music hits. That's fantastic. But it's in sort of keeping with what I said earlier, is that was fantastic because this was the heroics breaking into the the more small folky mundane level of things. I really liked there was a I think it was in one of the trailers. You'll remember the scene where Duncan Egg just sort of sat there on a hillside looking out over the tourney fields, the camps. Um, and Egg just sort of says, "Yeah, I could be very happy in a place like this." And then Duncan just sort of turns around and says, "You are in a place like this," and that just captured them in a way that it just made me smile. That was so much their characters. So yeah, there are so many wonderful little moments, but it's the moments when the two of them are together and they're just chatting that really work for me. Let's go to uh, some people call me modest, saying your thoughts on songs in Duncan Egg TV show in the Duncan Egg TV show. I like the fact they have songs. This is something George R. R. Martin does like. He picks this up, I think, from Tolkien as much as anything else. Tolkien obviously adored putting songs and poetry and things in the Lord of the Rings. Um, George R. R. Martin does it, um, and he does it on a number of different levels. Partly as kind of like political points, but partly just as showing normal people doing normal things, singing songs. And I think that's really where they're going with this. Is he has used the two most memorable times that I can think of with songs. Sir Arlen kind of singing his song, um, which told us about who he was and the kind of songs that he would sing, um, and Lionel Baratheon singing his song. Um, both times, they're characters who you might, from the stories, have thought that these characters are quite noble in a way, but the songs are used to bring them down to a different level. So I like the use of songs, and I like the way that they're doing them, not just as sort of a general world building thing, but to show us a bit about characterization. Question from James Borders. Thank you again. A bit more nuanced. I don't think George R. Martin needs an explicit history or cosmology, but that he over relies on the trope of myth and mystery. And yes, a result of the publishing schedule delay, too much lost in fog feels like indecision. Yep, happy to carry on down this route with it. So he over relies on the trope of myth and mystery. I mean, yeah, if I were to critique a bit on these lines, I would say that he does like this idea of history echoing, which is the kind of the trope of myth. Tyrion is Lan the Clever. Is he exactly Lan the Clever? Well, no, he's not exactly Lan the Clever, but would you put it past him to be echoing that story, sneaking into Casterly Rock, winning it for his team? Sounds about the kind of thing that he would be doing. Um, Abel the Bard, clearly trying to echo Bale the Bard. Um, then you get all of the kind of um, the myths from the um, Azor Ahai, and you get an attempt to recreate Azor Ahai. Um, so does he overdo that? Perhaps. I do accept the critique. Does he over rely on it? as a mechanism for telling his story. Again, I can accept the critique. Personally, I accept this as his method of storytelling. I think it is indisputably there. I think that you cannot read A Song of Ice and Fire without and try to interpret it without seeing the way that these things sort of echo through the age. Um, uh, he likes things rhyming in his story. Now, if you were to go even more meta with that, then you would say, what is this tale? This is a song of ice and fire. And he plays with this idea, I think, all the way through this, right from the very beginning, when we first encounter the others. What does uh I always forget people's names on the show. The Night's Watchman, Waymar Royce. What does Waymar Royce say to the other? Dance with me, playing on this idea of this being a song, music, dance. Um, then we get the ideas again and again of like we get the music playing through. We talked about music just a moment ago. The music plays all the way through this. Rhaegar himself seems to have turned the great prophecy, maybe it was always this, into a song of ice and fire. This is not just a matter of a prophecy of ice and fire. This is a song. And so we have music, we have dancing, we have singing. That kind of layers its way through this. And within that, you don't just get endless music, you do get a rhythm, you do get a chorus, you do get rhymes. And if I were to defend George R. Martin, having sort of critiqued him a moment ago, if I were to defend him on this count, it would be that his meta literary style is to try to take this concept of dance and music and song and rhyme and place that within his story. Um, Clash Ballerina, do you think A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms will give us info on Sir Arlan's backstory? I'm fascinated by why a Riverlander has a veil, House Hersey coat of arms. As a hedge knight, he wouldn't be sworn to House Hersey, right? I don't think I would have to check this. I don't think it's supposed to be House Hersey specifically. I think it's supposed to be his uh, arms. Um, are we going to get a backstory on him? I think we're going to get a backstory on Dunk, simply based on um, the trailers and images we've got, probably in the next episode. As I say, I've not seen the next episode. I don't know, but just from the screenshots they've given us, it looks like we're going to get some flashbacks, memories, something along those lines. Will that tell us about Sir Arlen? I hope so, but in the books he has been kept slightly enigmatic. One thing that the show has done is it has burst Dunk's bubble as far as memories of Sir Arlen go way earlier than happened in the books. People have speculated on reading the books that probably Sir Arlen wasn't this great figure that Dunk makes him out to be. But they told us that in episode 2 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And Dunk comes to that realization, which actually, in a way, it kind of makes me feel a little bit sad for we're therefore going to be missing out a little bit on his feeling and character growth going forward, because that's happened already. The thing I have wondered in the past, which I hope we will find, is how Sir Arlen chose Dunk. Now, it seems quite random. He's a hedge knight, yes, he's not going to be mixing with the great nobility, but still, even then, wandering around Flea Bottom, which is where Dunk was, and just sort of saying, "Hey, kid, you can be my squire," seems a little bit random. It made me wonder whether it wasn't random for some reason. I think the hints we've got on the show so far is that so he lost his squire before on the red grass field. The red grass field took place near to King's Landing. So he was near to King's Landing and in need of a squire. So perhaps we will find a reason why he chose Dunk. Um, in You know how my brain works. I did wonder. I don't think I ever said it out loud because it felt a little tinfoily. But I did wonder whether Bloodraven might have been involved in some way in trying to get those two together because it was so random. But if I had to guess, I think the show will come up with a slightly more um, normal bit of reasoning. Uh, Florigoski saying, "Hi, Robert. Silly question, just for fun. If you had children and could only choose names that were from A Song of Ice and Fire, which ones would you choose? Which people in The Song of Ice and Fire would I name my children after? Uh, um, well, that's quite a hard one. I mean, I always remember, at the risk it's a silly question, but at the risk of going slightly serious, I always wonder what happened to those people who named their children Khaleesi or Daenerys, because there were some people. Um, and then season 8 happened. Were they still as happy with their name choices then? I don't know. So, yeah, I think I'd probably want to hold out and see what happens to the characters first. Out of all of the names, I don't know, I think Sansa's a lovely name, I have to say. And perhaps it's too much to call your own son Rob, isn't it? Um, uh, let's uh, let's go with Ned. Why not? Good solid name. Thank you. Let's go to a question from Kirsty Angel. Hi there, saying, um, "I am thunder, and thunder is me. We are one beast. We are joined. We are one. We are one man, horse, lance. We are one beast of bold and wood and iron. Of his long wooden finger being his lance. Is he chanting spells?" So I don't know. So Thunder is the horse, the war horse. Um, let's wait an episode on this one. I don't like ducking questions, but let's wait an episode on this one. I think let's see if there's something more coming. Remind me next week to come back to this one if you want. I think I will go with my idea about Dunk in particular, that Dunk is not magical, but he does seem to be um, a Tavern from Wheel of Time. Where he goes, things change. He just strides into a room, and the threads of history just go scattering. Uh, he randomly turns up at this tourney. What happens at this tourney changes the fate of the Seven Kingdoms, and he just kind of bumbles out. Oh, I've got a Targaryen following me now. He happens to be in Dawn when half of the Seven Kingdoms dies from a deadly plague. He happens to meet and get friendly with a woman who's about to go off and unknown to her and the Lannisters, marry into the Lannister family and be the grandmother of Tywin. Um, he happens to wander into a tourney that is secretly the Second Blackfire Rebellion. It's all very so what you just happen to wander into those places. And when you get to the Blood Raven, I love this Blood Raven scene. And in fact, all of the Mystery Night, when if you accept that Blood Raven is Maynard Plum, who I think you should, um, all the way through this, you kind of see Blood Raven just thinking, why are you here? I don't think you're a part of this rebellion, but this is too much of a coincidence for you just to be wandering in. And it just makes me think that Dunk is not magical, but important fate issues just kind of emanate from him in some way. Um, so that was a little bit of a digression. I think the same is the case for Sir Arlen as well. I think is probably where I was going to go with that. Lazy ass madman saying, I prefer it if Arlen just says, you're a big lad, and thinks he'll get bigger. He could be useful. Yeah, I'd be all right with that, actually. SGH, might Cersei have a trial of 7 in wins, echoing Magor, making her the Mad Queen, echoing Magor, making her the Mad Queen, echoing Eris for Jaime's Valonqar moment. If so, who might be her 7? I don't think she's going to risk it. She is going in the books. She's going for a trial by combat. She has got her champion, Robert Strong, but where we left it with Cersei was very much that Kevin Lannister was in charge, but he'd been killed. Pycelle had been killed by Varys, and Varys had decided to frame the Tyrells, knowing full well that Cersei would next be in charge and would go, the Tyrells did this, they killed my uncle, I'm going to get them. And she already hates Marjorie. She will do something huge and dramatic, possibly blowing up the Great Sept. That's obviously what happened on the TV show. They got that idea from somewhere. That's the kind of thing she will do. It might be something different. It's probably something to do with wildfire, but I think she's going to hugely react. I do not think that she will submit to a trial of 7 or any kind of trial. James Boris, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms has done an exceptional job of bringing the literary lens in close, like Andor or Rogue One did for Star Wars, which is far more interesting to me than the grand politics or mythical meta-narrative. Yes, I absolutely agree. What I think they've done really well as well is they focused it down in close, but also you're aware of the bigger things. You're aware of the implications. Okay, so hang on, that guy's he's the nice Targaryen. He's helping us out, but he's the heir to the throne. These are deep waters we're in right now. So they've done a really good job of that, I think, of showing that yes, this is a really focused in narrative. It's just really got the one narrative running through it. It's not lots of complications going on everywhere. Um, the literary conceit of creating it just within the tourney area also adds this kind of almost claustrophobic feel to the episode. It makes it feel a lot more close. It makes it feel a lot more personal. You kind of get the feel that you can wander around and bump into the same people again. Oh, there's Steely Pate again. There's Tansel. And that, I think, is what works really well. When you have the bigger canvas, A Song of Ice and Fire, if you randomly bump into someone, it feels not forced, but it's like there has to be a reason for that person to be in that place. You're up in the north and you bump into somebody, that there's a reason why they're in the north. Here, no. It's a constrained area. You will bump into people just because that's what that kind of thing is like. Mad Dog, I think or hope, because of the hype of the show, George R. R. Martin will get a fire under his ass and release a new Duncan Egg novel this year before the egg actor ages out. Yeah. Um, no inside information, but I kind of, I kind of suspect he will. I think it's just my instinct. I think we will get another Duncan Egg story, and I think we will get another Duncan Egg story in the next 12 to 18 months. Do not. This isn't a prediction. This is just a. It feels right because he doesn't. He doesn't want the show to overtake him again. I think he's been burned by that. He does seem to have a good working relationship with Ira Parker, and he's got a couple of stories half written. He has gone on record as saying he thinks if he can finish some Duncan Egg stories and then go back to A Song of Ice and Fire, then maybe that will kind of unblock things for him. Uh, I think, given the success of the show, any pressure on him from his publishers to just do A Song of Ice and Fire will be lessened. I think that they would go, okay, well, we can do something with this Duncan Egg Part 4. Um, you don't just have to, if you're not going to be producing The Winds of Winter, we'll take this. That would be, if you just imagine for one moment, Duncan Egg Book 4 comes out, yeah, that would be a literary event. They would be able to sell that for a lot of money. So I think all the things kind of align, but he would have to do it quickly because they're filming season 2 now. They're already a few weeks into filming season 2, which means that give it another few months, they'll be starting to think about scripting season 3, assuming season 3 happens, and I'm pretty certain it will. So that means that they need, if they're going to carry on this yearly basis, in 15, 18 months' time, they would need another story to go on if they're going to do what Ira Parker says he wants to do, which is 4 or 5 in a block, and then wait, let the characters age up or the actors age up, and then do another block. So yeah, it would not surprise me if in the next 12 to 18 months we get another Duncan Egg story. Paul Whitrock, thank you very much. Didn't see a question attached to that one. I'll have a quick flick through, see if I can see one. Not immediately, but let me know. Let's go to a question from Skagzilla. I've been thinking about future seasons, how we've seen flashbacks. Do you think the showrunners will use the opportunity to show us glimpses? I started on this one before, didn't I? Show us glimpses of the Blackfire Rebellion or other significant past events. I think Ira Parker did do a Reddit Q&A, and he was sort of asked about this, and he basically said, keep watching. So the fact is, when you get to season 3, you have to understand what the significance of the Blackfires is. The casual reader will need to be casual watcher, viewer will need to have an understanding. They can build up some of that within the season, I'm sure, but they will want people going in there aware of it. Season 2, it's not as important, but it certainly adds extra layers to what you're reading in the story. You could do the story, you could strip all of the Blackfire stuff out of that story, it could still work, but it adds an extra layer. So almost certainly in season 1, and they've started seeding this in there. You've got Egg singing the song, you've got him doing the pretend fighting against Blackfires, that kind of stuff. So they've started to seed this. Expect more before the end of the season, so that by season 2 it can become an important plot point. Brian Valco saying, if I were Ira Parker, I'd answer any and all fan questions with "keep watching." Do you know what? I've not read all of the Q&A that he did, but I've read some highlights. And one thing I really liked was a couple of times people asked him something and said, "Why didn't you include that?" For example, Steely Pate says, he has this line about saying, "You're the knight who remembered his vows." And for many people, that was the heart of that story. That was the point of what Dunk is. All the others might have forgot their vows. Dunk remembers them. And somebody said, "Why wasn't this in the show?" And Ira Parker says, "Yeah, that was my mistake. It was in an early draft. It fell out. It probably shouldn't have done. I agree. It's a really important line. Sorry, guys." That's really refreshing. I was struggling to think. I mean, help me out if you can. I was struggling to think of the last time, if ever, I've heard a showrunner of a successful show when confronted with something going, "Yeah, all right, hands up. Yeah, that was a mistake." Um, so often, I think the instinct among showrunners is to get defensive and say, "Oh, yeah, you didn't understand what was really going on there. We decided it didn't fit in here, or whatever." Ira Parker was very happy to hold his hands up and say, "Yeah, that was a mistake." So I respect that. I hope that that kind of attitude continues. Um, uh, but yes, he does a couple of times say, "Keep watching." George R. R. Martin says, "Keep reading" a lot. It's a fair response to these things. Okay, let's go to. Or did we get a question? I don't think we did. Okay, let's go to a question from Jojo. Oh, actually, no. Let's go to Scott Morin. Hello, Robert. I've been watching A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and I've been thinking about the Blackfire rebellions and Aegon IV. It seems strange that none of the legitimized children claim the name Targaryen. Do you think there's something more to that, or just happenstance over the disputed inheritance? So these are the great bastards. When Aegon IV died, he legitimized his children by noble birth. So when we talk the great bastards, we're basically talking about four people. We're talking Bloodraven, Shira Seastar, Bittersteel, and Daemon Blackfire. And you're right. Noticeably, none of them seem to have immediately changed their name to Targaryen. Now, on the face of it, that might seem a little odd, because Daemon, in particular, was claiming the throne, or would eventually claim the throne. And you would think that it would make sense, therefore, for him to use the surname Targaryen. He is now legitimized. He is a Targaryen. But he doesn't seem to. So what's going on? Well, we don't know. George R. R. Martin hasn't told us. And I think we have to say that these are four very different characters who may well have four very different reasons for that. But let's go with a few thoughts. I think the first thought is that we don't know. They didn't. Perhaps they did. Perhaps George R. R. Martin writes the histories that we read. The information we have is via the Maesters. And whose side are they on? Well, they're in charge of the status quo. They are probably wishing to back the team that won, not the team that lost. So would they wish to retrospectively call Daemon Blackfire Daemon Targaryen, the first of his name? No, they would not. They would call him Daemon Blackfire. So I think that might be part of the answer. Another part of it is that these characters may have legally, formally accepted that their surname is Targaryen. They just they don't use it. If they had to sign something official, they would, but in day-to-day usage, they don't. Everyone has grown up knowing them by whatever name they've got right now, so they'll just go with that. There are also another level, I think. There's actually two different things going on here. There are those who seem to have taken on their own surname, and those who seem to have taken on a cool nickname. The different surname was Damon Blackfire and Shira Seastar. Now, you could imagine both of them, for varying reasons, might have said, I've got a surname that I kind of like. It's quite important to me for whatever reason. And so obviously Damon Blackfire, he thinks is important because it means he's got the sword Blackfire, the sword of the kings. That is the thing that he thinks is going to remind people of his status and who he is. If he changed his name to Targaryen, then what would happen? Every time he introduced himself, half the people would say, "You're not really a Targaryen." No one could dispute his name, Blackfire. So perhaps he decided to keep that. Shira Seastar, never, as far as we can tell, we don't actually know huge amounts about her, to be honest. But as far as we know, she didn't play on her name all that much. She was more about the kind of the magic and things like that. So maybe she just preferred keeping calling herself Seastar. Then you get the two people with the cool nicknames, and it's entirely possible that they thought, "Well, we're just Bloodraven and Bittersteel. We'll just keep the nickname. Technically, I might have another name from now on. In reality, everyone's going to call Bloodraven Bloodraven. They even called him Lord Bloodraven. Then they're not even bothering with Lord Brynden. This is Lord Bloodraven. So perhaps that was what was going on. It's just they couldn't be bothered. The nickname they've got is far too cool. So I think that's the answer. I think none of them would actually hugely benefit from it. I think that given the political climate at the time, I think that they would all be a bit disputed. This was a deathbed decision by a king who wasn't much loved, to make his bastards legitimate, almost certainly just to stir up trouble. Embracing that probably wasn't going to help them all that much. Wilma saying, do you think we'll see the same Bloodraven actor from House of the Dragon in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, or do you think of the shows as different universes now? Do you think it matters? I don't think it matters. We've not. So I think there's two layers to this. The first is that Game of Thrones quite regularly changed up the actor when a cameo turned into an important thing. You may remember when Bloodraven was first introduced on the show, then he was an old man with a big long white beard. And when I say introduced, we just had like an image of him really attached to the tree. They recast that to a more established actor for the season when he was actually going to be doing a lot more talking and walking about and stuff like that. Similarly, the Mountain and various other characters, when they got more of a significant role, they gave it to someone else. So there is history on this, and it would not surprise me if they just change it up, because the Bloodraven we saw literally for 2 seconds in House of the Dragon is not necessarily this. That's the third different actor of Bloodraven that we've had. If they go to a fourth, I don't think they'll worry about it too much. I don't think we should worry about it too much. I think the other question is an intriguing one about the other shows in different universes now. We've not had an update since I think it was the History of Westeros interview that George R. R. Martin did 3 years ago now, maybe 4 years ago, where he was asked about this, and he very much said he thought that there were two canons. There was book canon, which is entirely him, and there was show canon. And he felt that his role vis-a-vis show canon was to help make sure that all of the different shows were as close together as possible, but also the show canon as a whole was as close as possible to book canon. So that's what he saw his role as. He's clearly taken a step back from one of the shows, being House of the Dragon, and although he's still very much involved in the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. So I don't think he can still have that role as trying to ensure that everything hangs together. I suspect that HBO will want things broadly to work out so that they kind of fit together in the same universe. The rumors of there being a sequel to Game of Thrones, like an Arya after Game of Thrones in Essos kind of story, implies that they're wanting this kind of like playthrough thread. The House of the Dragon, including a forward look to Daenerys a couple of times now, actually, again shows that they're wanting us to be thinking of this as a long thread. I think they care less about the detail than George R. R. Martin does, but they are all in the same universe. Right, let's go to a question from Jojo Action. I've been wondering this for ages, and now the new show brought the question back to my mind. Why was Maekar allowed to order the Kingsguard to fight in the Trial of Seven? For one thing, wasn't the Trial of Seven to prove that the accusation or defense had merit by getting knights to risk their life and honor for it? Doesn't ordering Kingsguard to fight contradict that directly? For another, wasn't Maekar the fourth son, and he and his sons so far removed from the line of succession that they shouldn't be a priority? Who would be guarding the heir to the throne and his firstborn son during the trial? What's going on there? Well, the role of the Kingsguard is, yes, to guard the king, but they can't all be guarding the king at the same time. There are 7 of them. The 7 obviously picked in order to honor the gods. Usually, through history, then at least one of the Kingsguard was on a semi-permanent attachment to someone else, usually the heir. You see that, so the Hound was there protecting Joffrey, Criston Cole and Rhaenyra. That's the kind of idea. Usually at least one had that role. Another one was often sort of attached to the Queen or someone like that. So the Kingsguard weren't just about the king, they were about the royal family. Now, at this tourney, the king wasn't there, so some clearly had to be staying with the king, but a lot of Targaryens were, including the Crown Prince, next in line, and his son, Valar. And then you get the family of Maekar. So there are other Targaryens around and about, but this is a significant amount of Targaryens. It makes sense that there were a couple of, or in the books, 3 Kingsguard there. That generally makes sense. How is it that Maekar could order them to join his team? Well, I think you have to kind of take it from this perspective that you've got from their perspective, a member of the royal family has been attacked and hurt. And the Kingsguard are there to protect the royal family. So Maekar is just saying, you need to do your job. I'm going to be on this side. Aerion's going to be on this side. Darren's going to be on this side. Your job here is to be on this side. Baelor being on the other side was a surprise. It wasn't quite as dramatic in the books, it has to be said, as it was on the TV show. I think they did it really well on the TV show, but it wasn't quite that dramatic a thing. But when they signed up for this, it wasn't on the understanding, and you're going to be having to face the Crown Prince. But even so, it was very clear they were not going to hurt him. That was not a thing that was going to be happening. There was no way on this planet that the Kingsguard were going to be doing that. So immediately, this is George R. R. Martin playing with this, just subtly saying, this is supposed to be this great and holy thing. 7 against 7, the will of the gods will decide, etc., etc. In reality, we've got Deeren over here saying, well, I'm not really going to get involved. I'm going to fall off my horse at the first possible opportunity. You've got some Kingsguard. They're definitely not going to be targeting that guy over there. So you've got like the layers to this where it's like, actually, this isn't quite as pure as we thought it was. But through that, is justice done? One could argue yes. So I think it's George R. R. Martin just sort of playing with these ideas. It's always worth also remembering this was the first Trial of Seven for over a century. No one alive had ever seen one before. They'd only heard legends, rumors, maybe read about in the past what had happened. So they were kind of making up the rules on the spot. They didn't have this kind of expert there at hand saying, well, no, technically you're only allowed this person here and that. They were just deciding what they're going to do. And the way they set it up was to try and skew it in the favor of one side, but Baylor wasn't really wanting that. Okay, those are the questions from my patrons about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I have a lot more about A Song of Ice and Fire more broadly and some more about Lord of the Rings. Do drop some more questions in about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Very happy to answer them. Great Khan saying, cheers to you, Robert. I'm nursing a hangover, so I'm only picking up bits and pieces today. Thank you for all your knowledge and efforts, though. Well, it's just gone 11:30 at night here. I'm gonna say you must be in Australia if you're nursing a hangover. But even if you're not, plenty of water, some good food. You'll get through it. I believe in you. A Song of Ice and Fire questions. James Horner. Hello, Robert. I wonder what your thoughts on the only dragon rider that we're told has visited the Isle of Faces being Adam of Hull. You would have thought that at least one other dragon rider would have been curious about the mysterious island that nobody could sail to. Do you think there's some sort of magic that stops dragons, like on the wall? And if so, how did Adam manage to get past it? Well, I don't think there's a magic like at the wall. So when you read it, we actually get Alison's words. This is when Alison tried to fly her dragon over the wall. You read her words, and she's genuinely surprised and a little concerned. My dragon didn't want to go over the wall. That had clearly never happened before. So I think that tells us that she hadn't tried. But can we come up with a narrative for why no other dragon riders had tried? So I think there isn't this kind of barrier, magical barrier. All the defenses of the Isle of Faces seem to be natural ones of the currents pushing boats away, winds, maybe a flock of gulls coming and dive bombing you, that kind of thing. That couldn't stop a dragon, a fully grown dragon, from just flying in and landing. So I don't think that there's a particular defensive structure there. But why might they not have explored it in the past? Well, I think the first point is when we were talking about the Isle of Faces last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. We have to keep on remembering the geography. This is a big lake. It's 100 miles from one end to the other. It is a small island, we're told. Almost certainly, you cannot even see this island from the shore. So it's not as if this is something that you go, huh, what's that over there? And then somebody else says, oh, yes, that's a mysterious island we can't go to. It just wouldn't really crop up in conversation. And can I believe that Aegon and his sisters didn't land there? Well, if they didn't know the history of it, then they wouldn't be particularly interested in it. It was just like a random small island in the middle of a lake. And Aegon, he seems to have been quite a driven person, doing things all the time. First of all, fighting wars for a few years, and then going on these kind of progresses with his dragon. And when he wasn't there, he would be spending time in Dragonstone. So I kind of buy the idea that he didn't. Then follows wars, at least the first and Maegor were basically, their minds were just focused on war. They didn't have any time to be thinking about landing on mysterious islands. That's more of a peacetime thing. We do then get to peacetime kings. We get Jaehaerys and then Viserys the first. Now, Viserys himself didn't ride a dragon. He rode Balerion once, and after that, Balerion died, and he never rode another dragon again. So he is kind of out of the picture. We're really just saying, well, why didn't Jaehaerys do it? Perhaps just he wasn't interested. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things that, yes, it is. It's a sort of a slight question mark. Were there really no curious Targaryens? But you can mitigate that by saying, well, we know this is important, but probably they didn't. And probably most of the people around that area didn't even talk about it as an important thing. We've got several chapters based in Harrenhal and around the Riverlands. Nobody's there sort of going, oh, but we can't ever go to the Isle of Faces. The people who talk about it are the historians, the people who have read books or have been taught by historians, by the maesters. They're the people who talk about it, not just the common folk. And they talk about it as just like an historically interesting site. So if you never had somebody who was interested in historically interesting sites, then maybe nobody did land there. The biggest issue for me is not so much, I guess. I mean, I may well have said the exact opposite of this last time, but you change your mind on things. Is not so much why did no other Targaryens go there. What I simply, for the life of me, and maybe they'll give us an answer on House of the Dragon, cannot see a reason why Adam Velaryon went there, because he had other priorities at the time. He had no history of caring about the old gods, and yet he seemed to prioritize going there, landing, and talking to, if the rumors be true, talking to the Green Men. Great Khan, I'm still in Vietnam. It's 6:40 here, but I set an alarm just to see you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. 6:40 in the morning. I'll allow a hangover. That's okay. The locals here are desperate to outdrink me, but I have a reputation to uphold. Well, that sounds like a dangerous reputation to have. But congratulations if you managed to keep hold of it. Madeline Tyrell Dane. Hi, Robert. In the Game of Thrones show, Cersei discusses her child with black hair, who she had with Robert. I have seen people saying this creates inconsistency with the Maggie the Frog prophecy, as Maggie told Cersei she would have 3 children. In show canon, she had 4. I actually don't mind this, as I quite like the idea that even very accurate prophecies can have minor flaws, because not everything can be foreseen or is set in stone yet. People have some agency in their future. What do you think? So this is, as you say, this is a show versus book thing. In the show, you may remember this was only really mentioned once, maybe twice. Actually, it was a really good and interesting. They did a few of these good and interesting scene where you got Cersei and Robert talking to each other about their relationship, and they mentioned this child that they had, this black-haired child. Who died in infancy. Now, why did they include that? Well, I think partly because they wanted to show the relationship between Robert and Cersei. I think they did that very effectively, and partly because they wanted more evidence, clues about the hair color thing. They, for the casual viewer, hadn't read the books, they would not be expecting the twincest thing to be going on. So it was good for them to kind of drop some hints about the uh, the hair color issue, which Ned was going to be following. Now, they obviously, all the way back in episode 1, they showed the twincest, but in terms of this being the important plot point for why people are killed, why the country's hurtling towards war, that kind of thing, they probably wanted to seed a little bit of that in there. So I liked it on the TV show, but I do think that, yes, obviously this contradicts what Maggie the Frog said. Maggie the Frog was very clear that Cersei would have 3 children. I see your argument about people having sort of independence of action. It's not everything is not just fated according to what the prophecies say. I don't think George R. Martin would want us to think that. I think he goes to a lot of effort to be sort of saying you don't trust in prophecies. They'll turn around and bite you, that kind of thing. So, do I like it? I I think I like the fact that there are some people who seem to be absolutely spot on with their prophecies, proving that magic exists. Others less so. Melisandre. So the Melisandre can see the future, but she sees visions and misinterprets things. So I like that, and I think that what George R. R. Martin's focus, and I've said this many times on this live stream, George R. R. Martin's focus isn't on the truth of the prophecy; it's on people's reaction to it. So what he cares about is how will Cersei react to that. Now we've seen how she reacts to the Valonqar thing. We've seen how she reacts to the younger, more beautiful person taking everything you love kind of thing. But she's already lost 1 child. What happens if she loses a third? That's the point. A second. That's the point at which she remembers this part of the prophecy, and that will drive her action then. So I think that is an important plot point for George R. R. Martin, is Cersei's belief in it, not the truth of the prophecy itself. Because as it stands, there's nothing that she can go, well, that definitely didn't happen, so maybe this will happen, maybe it won't. At the moment, it sounds very real. This is the kind of thing Maggie the Frog nailed it, and that's why Cersei's scared. Let's go to Yeldenil, saying, "Hi, Robert. I hope you and Dan are thriving." We are, thank you. Why was Brienne not knighted when she won her rainbow cloak? Isn't the Kingsguard strictly for knights? So the rainbow cloak, this is for being a part of Renly's Kingsguard. Why was she not knighted? Well, 2 reasons, I think. Firstly, because Renly's a little rule breaker. And secondly, because, yes, theoretically, it's the Kingsguard is just knights. But the Hound wasn't a knight. The king gets to decide. This isn't some rule written in the constitution that can't be changed. This is something the king decides. And if the king decides, I want that person's a part of the Kingsguard. Was Sandok the Shadow technically a knight? Who knows? So there are plenty of examples. It doesn't. Mostly, it's knights. Theoretically, it's knights. The poets and minstrels be singing about it all being knights, but in reality, it's not necessarily. Yeldon also asking, do you think that Bran or Summer could have had a dragon dream when they saw the smoke dragon rise from Winterfell, perhaps sent by Bloodraven? And if so, what would it be a prediction of? So I'll read the context here, and then I'll sort of answer the question. So this is the very last chapter of A Clash of Kings. Bran has emerged from the crypts of Winterfell. Winterfell has been burned down. He's actually not emerged. Summer has gone out ahead first to scout out. Summer's wandering around looking at stuff. We're seeing this from Bran's POV through Summer. He being Summer, he sniffed at the drifting smoke. Men, many horses, and fire, fire, fire. No smell was more dangerous, not even the cold smell of iron, the stuff of man claws and hard skin. The smoke and ash clouded his eyes, and in the sky he saw a great winged snake whose roar was a river of flame. He bared his teeth, but then the snake was gone. Behind the cliffs, tall fires were eating up the stars. So that's what we read. And a lot of people have gone, hang on a moment. He saw a great winged snake whose roar was a river of flame. Summer saw a dragon at Winterfell. So let's park that for one moment and say, could this be a green dream, a dragon dream implanted by drug raven? Oh, that's another character entirely. Could he have been planting this in some way? Possibly, but this isn't they're not asleep at this point. This isn't a dream kind of thing, which normally green dreams and dragon dreams are. So that's not to say that he couldn't have manipulated things. We don't know the limits of his magic, but it's not an obvious thing that we know about already. But more to the point, this almost certainly isn't a dragon. At least not a literal dragon. If you read the whole, then the very next sentence, we've got the great winged snake, roar was a river of flame. Then we read, then the snake was gone. Behind the cliffs, tall fires were eating up the stars. If you take the smoke and ash clouded his eyes, and in the sky he saw a great winged snake as literal truth, then you also have to, I think, take as literal truth, behind the cliffs, tall fires were eating up the stars. Now, it's not actual cliffs. That's Summer's way of interpreting the walls of Winterfell. Fires eating up the stars, that's clearly poetic language. The fires were, heading up into the sky, the covering the stars, that kind of thing. We happily accept that as being slightly sort of poetic language, what perhaps a wolf would interpret this as. Given the fact that we've already been told that smoke and ash were clouding his eyes, so he's not seeing clearly, I think we also have to accept that the great winged snake is also poetic language, which isn't to say it's not important, which isn't to say it's just like an accident. George R. Martin dropped it in there. I think it was intentional on George R. Martin's point, but it was not intentional to show an actual literal dragon. I think it's intentional to poetically show, remember, this is the last chapter of the entire book, to poetically show that there has been a dragon hiding at Winterfell. And who's the dragon? It's Jon Snow. So I think that's what he was doing there. Could Bloodraven? I mean, I'm always happy to blame Bloodraven, but I don't think Bloodraven is necessary on this point. Flame G, hello to you, Robert and Dan. Why didn't Howland Reed adopt Jon until the right time had come? No one in the Seven Kingdoms would suspect that Jon isn't really this random lord's bastard, but a Targaryen child. He'd have been safe. Ned would have still been close to him. It would have saved Jon years of mistreatment from Catelyn, and Eddard's name wouldn't have been tarnished. If the reason is because Ned has to show Jon one day his mother in the crypts, he could still do this. Perhaps it would have even benefited Jon to grow up with Jodin as brother. What do you think? Yeah, I think it's a great plan. I think perhaps if they'd sat down and thought, where's the safest place for Jon to grow up? I think the Neck is probably as safe a place as any. Nobody goes in there. I'm sure they would have looked after him. they didn't have that huge amount of time to be thinking through these things, is the first issue. The second issue is that Ned is very much a I'm doing this myself kind of guy. Um, if he makes the promise, he's following through on the promise. Because the third thing is we do not know exactly what Lyanna made him promise. She'd made him promise more than one thing. And if she made him promise to hide John and pretend that he was his, to bring him up as a Stark, so that he understands that part of his cultural heritage, whatever, Ned would have taken that seriously and gone with it. So we don't know all of the ins and outs. I agree that purely pragmatically, it would probably make a whole lot more sense. Ned wouldn't have had to do all of this lying. I don't think Ned would have allowed that to happen, though. He's too hands-on a person. Lady Pushkins, hi Robert. Do you think that the purer the Targaryen, the more prolific the dragon dreams? Any thoughts or evidence? So, when you say purer, I'm assuming you mean good, but perhaps you mean like more, not less, sort of non-Targaryen blood in there. As for the latter, I don't think there is. You can look at Darren, who one of his parents wasn't a Targaryen. You can look at, on the show, Helena, one of her parents wasn't a Targaryen. Who else is obviously a dragon dreamer, gets strong dragon dreams. I mean, Aegon the Conqueror, one of his parents was a Velaryon. So it's I don't think you can make a strong case for that. In terms of the goodness, I think it is probably indisputable that Darren comes across as being all right, actually. Helena, certainly on the TV show, comes across as one of the nicer Targaryens. Yes, to be said. So perhaps, but I don't think that's how George R. R. Martin writes these things. If this were Tolkien, I would go, yeah, well, maybe the good person gets this. That's how Tolkien's brain worked. I don't think George R. R. Martin's brain works that way. I don't think he thinks, other than two or three obvious characters, I don't think he thinks as characters being, this is a good character, that's a bad character. I think he thinks of characters as being complex mixtures of some good things and some bad things. So, friend, saying happy Thursday, and to you. Do you think we'll find out what has triggered the others to return? And if so, what do you think it might be? I might be wrong on timings, but I think our best guess is it started 20-ish years before the events of A Song of Ice and Fire. As it is mentioned, that's how long Mance has been gathering the wildlings, and it was because of the others. Some unanswered questions at the end of the story is a good thing, but this one feels too important to leave hanging. So, do we know how long they've been back? Not exactly. I think the other bit of evidence some people often use is Craster. Craster, as far as we can tell, is quite hard to tell exactly. And it's not the kind of thing you really want your brain to be dwelling on, to be honest. But he certainly seemed to be sacrificing his male children, his boys, for a long time, because he's married to sisters and daughters, and then they've got children. So perhaps that's as much as 40 years. In any event, that's the kind of ballpark we're looking at. It's not immediately before the story. It's not hundreds of years earlier. It's a while, maybe 2 or 3 decades earlier, something along those lines. So why then? Perhaps we will find out. Perhaps we won't. I think the bigger question is, what they want. Why are they coming back? Not just why then. The two may be connected. Who knows? I think George R. R. Martin will give us enough information to understand the motivations at a high level of the others. I think we're not just going to end up with and they just want to turn the world into everlasting winter and kill everyone. I think George R. R. Martin is a lot more nuanced than that. So I think that there will be other reasons. It may well be something to do with revenge. It may well be something to do with um, uh, the sort of. Well, actually, I think my main one is probably revenge against the children of the forest. I think the humans are just like they just happen to be in the way, and they're the ones who sort of chase them away in the first place. So I think they're wary of humans, but humans aren't the main target. Question from Great Khan. I've been going through your streams on Sozi cities while I've been riding. I have no question. I just want to say thank you. Oh, for using your knowledge for good instead of evil. Well, thank you. I hugely appreciate it, and I love to hear where people are listening to these. Um, Using my knowledge for good instead of evil. I mean, how could I use my knowledge for Song of Ice and Fire for evil? Don't answer that one, lest I get any ideas. But thank you. I hugely appreciate it. Let's go to Per Marcus Risman. Seven blessings to you and the mods. Mods, yes. Not said thank you to the moderators yet. We've been going for 2 hours. Moderators, thank you. If you're watching this live, the reason why the chat is such a fun and uplifting place is that moderators do huge amounts of work that you can't see behind the scenes, blocking people, welcoming people, making people feel at home, all of the good stuff. If you are watching this live and in the chat, could you just give a little bit of love to the moderators? I hugely appreciate it. I will also, as well as me personally giving some love to the moderators, I'll also give a bit of love to my patrons. Thank you, patrons. I hugely appreciate your support. I can't do this without your support, so thank you so much. And what else shall I say? Yes. So the main channel videos are, well, in fact, this video you might be watching it on Facebook, in which case, hello, or X, in which case, hello to you. So this is now going out live simul streaming on 3 different places. Great to see you if you're over there. At the moment, I'm just answering questions on YouTube, but I will try my best to figure out the technology to expand beyond that in the future. The technology might be a second screen, who knows? But the videos on the main channel, I think I've mentioned this before, I'm now uploading them to a variety of different places, all of them free, but they're up on Facebook, they're up on Spotify. If you want the audio versions, they're wherever you get your favorite podcasts, Apple and other places like that. So I may expand that into other places as well, who knows? But if you find it easier to watch the videos somewhere else, then fantastic, that's for you. Right, let's go to Per Marcus Rismans. This is more of a follow-up on a previous topic about dragonglass and weirwood connections across the Narrow Sea. You hinted that the others, if they are indeed a created race, might have been programmed by the children to have a weakness to obsidian. We also know that they are weak to Valyrian steel. Does this hint at some form of connection between the two? We often speak of the magic system as divided between blood, fire, ice, etc., but the magical system is quite opaque. Maybe there isn't that kind of difference between Valyrian and the children's magic as we want to imagine. Maybe the dragon glass is connected to the weirwoods in a magical way, and Valyrian steel to the shade of the evening trees, or what is going on. Okay, my working theory is that, yes, when the others were created, the children of the forest wanted them to have a weakness, and the weakness was to the thing that they used as a weapon and humans did not: dragonglass. That bit makes logical sense to me. Now, if we try and add together the various myths that we have of the Long Night and the various heroes we've got there, I tried to do this a couple of times recently, but at a very high level, the last hero sets out with his friends to try and find some way to defeat the others because the war is going badly. The others are winning. He loses all his friends, but he finds the children of the forest and they help him. Cut to Azor Ahai forging a weapon that will defeat the others. Cut then to the Battle for the Dawn. where you get we're told, the first of the Night's Watch charging down and attacking the others and winning. How could they possibly win? Because they've got weapons that work. If I had to guess, one of the constituent parts of Valyrian steel that makes it different and sharper and more magical, and in particular able to hurt the others, is because it's got some dragon glass in it, some obsidian in it. That, I believe, is one, and we know it's got a darker color, more rippled effect on it, which, if you've ever looked at obsidian, yeah, it's dark, and it does sort of have more of a rippled effect to it. So that's my kind of working theory, is that the reason why Valyrian steel works is because it's got dragon steel in it, but we've forgotten that. That was a secret that was kept by old Valyria. Question from Great Khan saying, okay, love to the old mods and the new. Love it. Andrew K saying that this is the start of my 7th year as a mod. I was made a mod in Game of Thrones season 8 year. Time flies. Wow. Thank you, Andrew. You're an excellent human, and I hugely appreciate you. So thank you very much for that. 8 years is a long time. Seventh year. Is it really just 7 years since Game of Thrones season 8? It does feel. Wow. Time does fly. Corvus Codex saying, good evening, Robert, Dan, and all. My question is, how was Tyrion allowed a trial by combat if he wasn't a knight? I've been racking my brain to think of another circumstance where a non-knight made the challenge. Is it his house name that breaks the rules? Well, we don't know. We don't know the rules. The short answer, we only have 2 examples of Trial of 7, and only a few more of a trial by combat. And so, I mean, Tyrion obviously has 2. He has the one in the Eyrie and then the one down in King's Landing. Neither occasion do people dispute the fact that he can. So, whatever the rules are, they seem pretty clear that Tyrion is allowed. Now, my understanding is that this isn't about whether you're a knight being challenged, or even if you're a member of the royal family. I think theoretically you can, if somebody's there before a septon, they can demand a trial by combat. That's just part of the rules of the systems that are there. The rules are about who it is who can defend you. It's not about who you are, if that makes sense. I think the only rule that we specifically that we know is that if you are a member of the royal household, royal family, then you do need to have a Kingsguard to defend you. So that's why Cersei is so very keen to have a member of the Kingsguard. If Jaime can't help, she needs another one, because actually they're very low in numbers. If you read your way back through A Dance with Dragons, it gets quite noticeable that you get your 7 Kingsguard. What happens? Oh well, the Hound goes away. Okay, so Jaime's gone away. Okay, we sent one down to Dawn with Marcella. He got killed. We sent another one down there just to check up on what's going on. Then there's a couple that Cersei's that got involved in all Cersei's plans, and they've got locked up. And it's like, actually, how many have we got left now? It's not many. So she's just a little bit uncertain, which is why she needs this new member of the Kingsguard, and why she basically commissions Qyburn to be doing that. Blake Khan saying, praise the many-faced mod. Love it. Let's go with Orion's Orcas saying, I hope you're well. I'm not feeling good at all. Well, I hope you're feeling a lot better soon. Do you think part of the reason the Winds of Winter is taking so long to write and will be so massive is because he abandoned the idea of fast-forwarding 5 years? Might he be attempting to cover many years to get the Stark kids, Jon, Dany, and the dragons older and larger for a dream of spring. I mean, I think that's probably part of it, but he's broadly covered this, it has to be said. So in his mind, the gap was going to be before A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. That was when we were going to get the big gap. And he started writing, trying to figure out how to sort of come back after this. He started writing a massive Aryan chapter, like a prologue, where it was like, oh, and what's been happening down in King's Landing? Well, this has been happening in King's Landing. What about Winterfell? Oh, this has been happening. He thought that felt a little bit forced, which it probably would have done. Added to which, he felt that there were some characters who just would not sit still for 5 years. He thought, believably write, and Arya trained to be a faceless assassin for 5 years, and I don't know, Sansa stayed in the Eyrie for 5 years. Whatever it is, he felt that he could believably write those things. He did not feel that he could believably write Cersei just hung around and didn't do anything for 5 years. She's a woman of action. No. So he's partly got through that. One of the ways he's got through that 5-year gap issue is to be. They're not spending the whole 5 years there, but the characters have got the time scale of the books as a whole has increased. So the characters are getting some time for their training montages. Bran is going to stay a while in the cave, and indeed, he showed us the passage of time. There's that one chapter, his last chapter, where we just get like, and the moon was. And it's just like, oh, okay, we've gone through another moon cycle here, and another moon cycle, and another moon cycle, just to help us understand months are going by at this point. And obviously, what happens with John and Dany is basically him writing out what happens during this period when I'd said that nothing was going on. So he's sort of worked his way through that. The bigger issue, I did a whole video on this if you're interested, what is the delay, but I think the bigger issue is the interaction between the fact that he has expanded the story at this point, which he didn't have to, but he clearly wanted to. And when I say he expanded it, suddenly we've got a whole extra plot line with Aegon the Sixth. We've got a whole extra plot line with Arianne and the Dornish plot line. We've got the whole plot line in the Iron Islands, Aryan, people like that, Victarion. We've got Brienne. When you look at the Brienne chapters in that last book, they're good chapters. But does that really drive the plot forward? Not hugely. So he's expanded out the cast of characters and the amount of story, and then he pushed that forward into his normal style of writing, which is this Gardner style where he doesn't know exactly which path he's going. He's not plotted it out in advance, so he kind of like follows his muse down a path in the garden, and then goes, oh, actually no, I'll come back. I'll go down the next path, see where that one takes me. No, I'll go down the next path and see where that one takes me. And when I'm saying going down that path, I literally mean he'll write a chapter or two and see whether he likes where that storyline is going. So he's got caught up in this that he has to follow down these different routes and see what's working. And he's now got so many characters and so many different plot lines that each and every individual thing intersects with lots of other different plot lines. So it all has to be thread together. It's not impossible to do, but it is hard work. Dancing Rat, you have an interesting theory about the Winterfell crypt statues. Do you think Jon will encounter a living stone golem of his mother, and what impact would that have on the narrative? Okay, so this is interesting because Lyanna has a statue there, absolutely, and her bones are buried there. We don't know the exact mechanism by which the spirits or souls are trapped there, because they do appear to be. That's what the legends say, that the spirits or souls are trapped there. We get that chapter where Ned's soul clearly comes back. Hodor, Summer don't like it at all. Bran, Rickon have dreams of their father returning. Clearly, his spirit has come back after he dies down in King's Landing. And we then obviously get the statues themselves that are often, every single time, in fact, described in anthropomorphic ways, that as if they're alive. So we do not know the exact mechanism that would trap the soul there, but it's probably some combination of they need the statue, the sword placed across their laps seems to kind of trap them in, according to one of the legends. Their bones need to be there, and their spirit needs to be there, so they need to die. And perhaps they need to be the king/lord of Winterfell. Now, some or all of those apply. We do not know exactly what. All we know is that for some of them, they clearly have met those criteria. For others, they probably haven't. Ned's spirit seems to have gone back. Ned's bones have not got back there yet. Do we need his bones to be there for him and a statue of him to sort of rise? We don't know, perhaps. Lyanna was never a lord of Winterfell. She has got a statue. She is buried there. Her bones are there. Does that mean she qualifies? We don't know. If I had to guess, it would be a combination of the statue to give them the kind of the physicality to do the stuff, the bones, and the spirit. Them being a lord of Winterfell, which means that Lyanna, I think, probably no. Okay, let's go to a question from Orion's Orcas. Do you see Ghost as the most connected to the magic of the old gods and the weirwood trees because of both his colouring and knowing things? Do you think that could rub off in Jon from living inside of him? I think that this is clearly Bloodraven colouring, and I think that the hint here is that this is that Bloodraven has been walking into Ghost all this time. I think that's what we're talking about here. I don't think that Ghost is in and of itself a direwolf closer or more magical or anything like that. I think this is just the one that has been chosen by Bloodraven because he's got a particular interest in Jon Snow. Skagzilla, is there any explanation about why Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar were seemingly fine about single-handedly starting a massive rebellion? Surely they knew there would be some huge backlash. Northern Honor demands action, Robert being Robert, and Aerys being a royal Fruit Loop. Surely anyone who knew the major players in the realm would know that this is sparking a powder keg. Well, yes, they may well have known. In fact, I'm sure they had some kind of idea. But I think there are 2 points that I would make on this one. First of all, contrary to sort of how the TV show presented it, this wasn't the thing that sparked the war. The thing that sparked the war was Aerys demanding Robert and Ned go to King's Landing. That forced them to make a decision. Do they do what the king says, or do they go away and rally the banners, call the banners? They chose the latter option. Now, at that point, nobody knew the details of what had happened. Yes, Brandon had charged down to King's Landing, demanding Rhaegar. Rhaegar has kidnapped my sister, etc., etc. But nobody knew the details of what was going on there. So that's the first half. Is that Ned and Robert heading off to call the banners was not a direct response to this rumor that they would have heard about Rhaegon Lyanna. That rumor did grow and became a driving factor, but that wasn't the spark, the catalyst for what happened. That's the first part. The second part that I think we need to remember from Rhaegar and Lyanna's perspective is timing. Now, if we say they ran off together, just for the sake of argument, they're both happy, they've fallen in love, whatever. They head off. Where are they going? We don't know where they went first, but if they did head towards the Tower of Joy, we know they eventually headed towards the Tower of Joy. They will have wanted to stay off of the main roads so as not to attract attention. Across country, down through the Riverlands to the Tower of Joy, probably was a month, maybe. Remember, this was quite cold at the time. This was winter time still, so it was not easy traveling. So them getting there, even if they went directly there and then immediately learned about what had happened, it would have been too late, because by that point Robert and Ned had already set off for war. So even if they go direct there and then go, well, what do we do now? They couldn't stop things. Maybe Lyanna might think, okay, well, I can write to Ned. Maybe I can persuade him. It's entirely possible. We don't know. This is a pure speculation. It's entirely possible that she wrote to Ned. Where is she going to write to Ned? Ned, she's just heard. He's left the Eyrie. He's gone to call the banners. Nobody knows where he is. He's gone over land somewhere. He's got himself a fishing boat. He's trying to get over the bight. They don't know exactly where he is. Her only option would have been to write to him at Winterfell. So let's say she sends a raven up to Winterfell. When Ned gets up there, what's happened? Well, Robert Baratheon has charged into Gulltown, taken Gulltown, headed all the way over to Storm's End, rallied his own banners, charged across the Stormlands, took out 3 armies in one day, and was starting to charge west, where the armies of the Reach are already starting to move against him. That's the point at which Ned receives this. Actually, that rumor that Rhaegar kidnapped me, that's not true. Actually, I'm in love. And all the while, Robert Baratheon is raging about Lyanna and Rhaegar. What's Ned going to do? Can he call it off? He can't call it off. They've gone too far now. So what's his only hope? His only hope is to try and get Lyanna out of there in some way, shape, or form, and try and stop this. Ned, do not forget, and as I say, that's all purely theoretical. I don't think it happened exactly. I don't think she wrote to him at Winterfell. That's just purely theoretical. But do not ever forget, Ned has serious trauma from this war. Ned does not like to think about that time, particularly what happened at the Tower of Joy, but also more broadly. He does not like thinking back to it. This is not a happy memory for him. This was not a glorious war where he helped his best friend become king. This is horror for him, and it fits with this idea that he knew from some point in this story, he knew that this was actually all, not for nothing. Getting rid of Aerys was a good thing, but the Robert's rebellion was built on a lie is true. Great Khan saying, I've only watched the show. I'm waiting for a dream of spring before I commit to the books. So until then, you're stuck with me. Well, I'm delighted to be stuck with you. If you're waiting for a dream of spring, you're waiting for a long time. I'm one of the more optimistic members of this community when it comes to George writing the books, but he's got to write The Winds of Winter before he writes A Dream of Spring. Rabbi Mitra saying, salutations, and to you too. Do you believe that Danny's vision in the House of the Undying about a king with a wolf's head overseeing a hall with corpses was an abandoned plotline by George R. Martin? In A Storm of Swords, when we cross the Red Wedding chapter and the phrase have sowed grey winds head onto Rob's body, were we supposed to have this corpse be resurrected alongside Stoneheart in some way? Is there a way we see this wolf-headed Rob Stark coming back in the Winds of Winter? Joe Magician has a video describing her seeds of how this might be, or is this another abandoned plotline similar to the Tyrion meeting the Shrouded Lord? I've got a video on Tyrion meeting the Shrouded Lord coming out this week, next week, sometime soon. So keep an eye out for that. No, I don't think this is an abandoned plotline. I think this is a study on what prophetic visions look like, which is that they're not all as clear as Maggie the Frog's. Maggie the Frog was actually one of the clearest possible sort of visions of the future that you could get. When Dany went into the House of the Undying, she had so many visions, and some of them were almost memories running towards the house with the red door, etc., etc. But some of them a lot more thematic, let's put it that way. She has a vision, for example, of a winter rose bursting forth from a chink in a wall of ice. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean at some point in the future she's going to be at the wall and see a winter rose coming up? Well, no. The winter rose is symbolic of Lyanna. That was her favourite flower. That was what the garland of winter roses was what Rhaegar presented to her as Queen of Love and Beauty, etc. So that is symbolizing her. At the wall, that's Jon. Jon is at the wall. And Smeet Smelling is because she's going to kind of like Jon. So that's the symbolism of what we've got going on there. And I think we need to interpret some of these other things similarly with symbolism, which we do, for example, when we get the Mummer's dragon. It's like, what does that a dragon on cloth held, a cloth dragon held up? I mean, it's like, what does this mean? Well, we've all kind of interpreted that, but it's not spelt out. Similarly here, if we have this is before in the books, this is before the Red Wedding, don't forget. So this is just sort of symbolically what's going to be happening. If we have a king with a wolf's head overseeing a hall with corpses, that's symbolically what happened. Whether it actually happened is a different matter entirely. But it happened in a slightly different way. The head with the wolf's head on the body seemed to happen afterwards, not staring out over this hall of corpses. But yes, there were, etc. So, but the theme is there. So I think this is a matter of let's not interpret these things too literally. Bacon, no, I just did that one. Red Line. Hi, Robert from Australia. Hi. In your opinion, which Stark children do you think will reunite with Lady Stoneheart, if any at all? Ooh, so I find this quite a tough one. In that she's clearly in the Riverlands, and the Starks are all going to be heading to the north. So is she going to head to the north? Possibly. She because she didn't appear in the TV show, we've not got any even hints about what's going on there. We know she's out for revenge against the Freys and the Lannisters and the like. We know that she's trying to find Arya and Sansa. So she's not going to get any news of Arya until Arya returns. Sansa, she may hear about if Sansa announces herself in the Vale, which she probably, according to Littlefinger's plan, she probably will. So perhaps she will head north and meet the Stark children who are there. Maybe too late to meet Rickon, maybe too early to meet Bran. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be Sansa, maybe even Jon. But this isn't in the immediate future, because the Riverlands is a very long way from the north, and she's got business in the Riverlands first. And there seem to be two things that are keeping her there, not just in the Riverlands, but keeping her alive, going, unalive, whatever it is that she is. One is the need for revenge, and I think that she will get that with the Red Wedding 2.0, which I will do a video about at some point. And the other is her children. She thinks that her children have all been killed. If she discovers they're not, if she has got the revenge, then perhaps she can accept and move on. Let's go to Lady Vaughan-Strauss saying, "Hello, Robert. Why did the children of the forest carve the faces of humans into the weirwood trees and not their own faces? It's quite the artistic anomaly to carve a race your people have never encountered. Does that indicate that the children lived for eons with faceless trees before the humans showed up in Westeros? And what would be the purpose of adding the images of genocidal men to their sacred trees?" Well, I think the answer is that we don't know that they are faces of humans. Now, or not intentionally. I think on one level, we're never told that these are particular nuanced works of art, but they are perhaps enough for you to sort of like go, oh, that one's happy, that one's grumpy. At one point, you get people going, oh, that looks a bit like such and such a person. Our brains are trained to look for those kinds of patterns. So the children of the forest have got faces that look human-ish. So I think they were carving faces that look a bit like theirs, and it's on a tree, so it's not a nuanced work of art. Humans saw human faces in there, and then perhaps for the pact, we know they carved faces into the trees. Then maybe, as this was a coming together two peoples, they did. Some of them were supposed to be children of the forest faces, some of them were supposed to be human faces. That kind of makes sense to me. So, yeah. And some of them are very probably carved by humans. Let's be honest. Any newer ones, any ones that have been done in the last few thousand years since the children of the forest disappeared, if there's a face on it, it was done by humans. And famous elephant. The Mad King has sent to the Eyrie for Stark's head, but Jon Arryn sent him back defiance, not using wards as hostages, but keeping his vows to the boys. Yeah, that's true, exactly. So, yeah, the Mad King sent to the Eyrie for Ned Stark's head. Jon Arryn sent him back defiance. So he protected them, and then they decided, well, this isn't going to end, is it? The Mad King is escalating and escalating and escalating. Whatever happened was nothing to do with Ned. He was summoned to be killed, basically, and so what are you going to do? So yeah, that's it's a good quote, because I think it kind of sums up where they're at. That they weren't there going, oh, what are we going to do about Rhaegon and Lyanna? They were there going, the Mad King's coming for us. What are we going to do now? Dagan. Hi, Robert. Wanted to ask if you think the power that gives the wall the ability to block magic comes from the faintly glowing, seemingly sentient weirwood hidden beneath the Night Fort. The Dryad Crow's Cave has similar wards. So we don't know the details of exactly what the magic is that holds up the wall. That doesn't hold up the wall, but provides the magical barrier of the wall. We're told that this was Children of the Forest who did this. I mean, I kind of like the idea that perhaps this is connected to the Weirwood network in some way, the magic, rather than them just sort of like going along and casting a spell at this bit of wall and then now cast a spell at that bit of wall, but actually having something in the wall like the the Black Gate, the weirwood face that's down there, that is the heart of all of that magic. So that kind of it sort of makes sense to me. Yes, you're right that there is a similar magical barrier around Bloodraven's cave. Uh, are the two using the same magical technology? Probably, yes. So, is it from the weirwood tree? Maybe. We simply do not know enough about the Children of the Forest magic. I wish I could give you more on that one. I think it's a really nice idea, but I don't think we've got enough to prove it one way or the other. Let's go to a question from Dagan again, saying, given that High Valyrian has gender-neutral terms, do you think that the Lord of Light or God of Flame and Shadow, the Fiery Heart, is actually referring to a Lady of Light? I may be reaching, but if the core events in the legend of Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa were based on truth, then perhaps this gave rise to the religion we see today. Yeah, so I like that. It's good thinking. Um, I think what I would say is that High Valyrian is not created by George R. R. Martin. Um, and when I say that, yes, he obviously created the idea of High Valyrian, and he created, I think, 7 words in High Valyrian. And he had this phrasing that we've got there when Maester Aemon sort of comes to this conclusion. It was in the translation. It wasn't the prince that was promised, it could be the princess that was promised, because dragons do not have a gender. So a lot of people have taken this approach that this means that Valyrian does not have a gender. Um, uh, you can describe things and it's not very clear which gender different things are. The person who did come up with High Valyrian, David Peterson, he came up with it for the TV show. This was fully sanctioned by George R. R. Martin, but George R. R. Martin did not have an input into it. He has responded on this, and he has said that what Maester Aemon said does not, and we're getting into language nuance here, but I think it's good stuff. What Maester Aemon said does not necessarily mean that the language does not have masculine and feminine. Just that the word dragon is gender neutral. And he uses the example that in English there are some words that are also gender neutral, like doctor or friend. Now, that could mean either male or female. And what Maester Aemon is saying is that in the translation that they've got across from that, somebody assumed that because, and this is where the linguists themselves will be able to come up, tell me the exact terms, because we're talking about the prince that was promised is in connection to a dragon, that could have meant princess, because dragon does not have a gender in terms of the language. So David Peterson is the opinion that this is not the case more broadly, but it is the case in some instances. And so until we get George R. Martin to confirm one way or the other, I suspect he would just bow to David Peterson. He's been very open, George R. Martin. Yes, he clearly knows, loves, understands language, but he knows, loves, and understands English. He's not a philologist. He's not creating new languages. He's not Tolkien. He's very happy that David Peterson did that for him. Scott Morrins asking about Bravos. One curiosity that didn't come up when we were talking about Bravos was the Bravos. What role do they serve within the city? It seems strange to allow duels to the death in the city streets after nightfall for no purpose. In time of war, do you think they'd be conscripted into a Bravosi army? Do they answer to the Sea Lord? So I don't think that they answer to anyone. These are young I think this is just it comes from this kind of idea. George R. Martin loves these kind of old films. If you imagine like kind of the Three Musketeers kind of era films, where you just get these dashing people running around having duels with one another, that's the kind of feel he was going for. And the point I think is that these people are um, free. They can do this. He is trying to show the freedom that is in Bravos. He shows that it's not just to do the Bravos. This is to do with lots of different the courtesans, lots of different aspects of life going on. If you went to Volantis, that would not be happening because there's so many people who are just slaves. If you're wanting a courtesan, you would get a sex slave. That's the deal. If you want a fighter, oh, you've got the Unsullied for you here. These are free people, and they're young men, lots of testosterone, just going out in a way which is kind of swashbuckling. I think we can overthink this, but it is definitely George R. Martin showing that this is a free city where people are able to go off and do what they want, really. Right, let's go to that's the last of my Song of Ice and Fire questions in over on Patreon. I've got 3, 4 more questions about Lord of the Rings. Do drop some more questions into the chat. Wheezy Squeezes box. I love it when the chat drops in good bits of knowledge. In Chinese, ta refers to he or she. There you go. I've learned something today. Lord of the Rings questions, Anna E. Hi, Robert and Dan. In the Fellowship of the Ring, early in The Ring Goes South, Frodo describes seeing a red star burning like an eye in the southern sky. Tolkien emphasized that star and that Frodo was seeing it every night, but then it's not followed up on. Seems strange to me that Frodo wouldn't wonder at seeing a whole new, to him, star in the night sky, and not at least as Bilbo or Gandalf about it. Do we know what that star is, or if it has any significance? I will catch you on Saturday as I'm firmly on Team Dan and take myself off to bed before you even start. Well, I hope you're fast asleep now. So, what is this star? Yes, you're absolutely right. There is a star. Did I cut and paste it? No, I didn't. The quote. Probably should have done. But yes, he sees this star, a red star, and attention is drawn to it, and it's never really explained. Now, this isn't the evening star, morning star, Erendil in the sky. That it's not that. So this isn't like talking about hope. It is red. It is kind of evocative of Sauron without really being Sauron. He's not seeing the Eye of Sauron. Everybody's best guess, because Tolkien didn't explain this, is that this is probably Mars. And him seeing it is a portent of war. Mars, obviously, being the god of war. So it's portentous or potentious, not a thing which is specifically to be interpreted or anything like that. Okay, let's go to AD Ross. I'm struck by how powerful the Noldor returning from Valinor were in the First Age, so much so they might have been able to overthrow Morgoth had they not been so disunited. And then in the late Second Age, the Númenóreans were so powerful even Sauron with the One Ring couldn't stand against them. I wonder then if they were equally powerful at their worldly, if not moral, heights, or do you think one group attained greater power than the other did? So, a comparison between the Noldor and the Númenóreans. So the Noldor, fresh from Valinor, with the light of the two trees still there, thrumming through their veins, would have been the more powerful. That's not to say that the Númenóreans at the height were not powerful, but Tolkien kind of makes clear. So the light of the two trees, it's not just two bright and shiny trees that were there. This is good, nourishing, healing, enriching light. This is light as it should be, not just a way to sort of illuminate things, but this is just enriches your life. And the Noldor had been there being blessed by this light for ages. So when they came to Middle Earth, they came fresh with that light still there in their system. So that was what gave them the edge. The Numenorians, at the height of their power, they, some of them descended from Elros, who himself descended a bit before from a Maya. So they had that going on in there, and some elf blood as well. But it was mostly technological advances. Firstly, in a good way, secondly, in a bad way. So I don't think Tolkien would particularly want us to compare the two. I think man for man, man for elf, then the Noldor fresh from Valinor would have been above. And not last question, Ranabe Mitra. As a follow-up to your recent video on the elves staying in Middle-earth, I wanted to ask what happens to the fear that's the spirit of those elves that have faded away as we've moved into the fourth and fifth ages of Middle-earth. I would be referring to the last sets of Morroquendi in the east of the Misty Mountains that did not ever get the sea longing or impetus to go to the west. So yeah, the elves who did not pass into the West, they faded. And Tolkien, he doesn't sort of go into the details of this, but Middle-earth is not designed for elves. Elves are immortal. They live forever. The pace of their lives is therefore gentler, and it's more of a level over a very long period of time. Living in Middle-earth is about birth, death, regrowth, on and on and on. Trees growing, being destroyed, humans being born, growing up, dying, and then their children doing the same. And it's like this never-ending cycle of birth, death, and renewal. That is just, it doesn't work for the elves. Valinor does work for them. That's their natural environment. So what Tolkien basically says is that if an elf just sort of clings on in Middle-earth for too long, eventually they will fade. And he's got, there is a sort of a passing reference to them sort of like in woods being, and the kind of implication he's got is that a lot of these kind of legends that we have of like there's some dryads in the woods, there's some ghostly figures. These are the elves. This is the fear of the elves, the spirit of the elves who are still there after they faded. It still kind of clings on. If you want, it's not the exact same thing, but if you wanted a kind of example, you got after Sauron was killed at the end of the Second Age, then his spirit hung on. That's the Fae staying. When the body has died, the Fae will stay on. But when Saruman, if you remember, Saruman died at the very end of the story, at back end, his spirits kind of rose up and then it got blown away. So his spirit getting blown away was almost certainly this was Manwë blowing away his spirit. His spirit was scattered. It's still out there somewhere, but it just can't reassemble and take physical form. One more question from my patrons. Now is the last chance to drop things into the chat. I will go through and see what I can see in there. Katrina V. Aragorn is one of the few characters whose birthday we're told, March the 1st. According to the appendices, he met Gandalf the White on March the 1st and later chose to die on March the 1st. Do you think Tolkien did that deliberately? And if so, why? I personally love that Aragorn was reunited with his mentor and friend on his birthday, with all the hope and joy that brought. Yeah, I do think it's deliberate. March the 1st is in many sort of calendars, this is the sort of the official start of spring. You would get December, January, February would be winter, then you get spring starting in March. Now, yes, there are different ways of doing it and cutting things. I know different hemispheres are going to be different again. I know, but for Tolkien, that will have been the thing he thinks of. New hope, new birth, the good days are ahead. The dark winter nights are behind us. He is Hope, Estelle. This was the name he was given as a child. So I think it's deliberate that he is echoing this idea of Aragorn being hope, being a new spring. And I agree. It's not a coincidence that March the 1st was when he met Gandalf again. Tolkien does do quite a bit to do with dates, the extent to which he sometimes protests too much. The Fellowship sets out from Rivendell, for example, on the 25th of December, and he says, "Oh, this is just a happy coincidence," but clearly not just a happy coincidence. It's the 25th of March when the One Ring is destroyed, a traditional date for Easter. So they set out at Christmas, and at Easter we get the great sacrificial end. So he clearly liked this idea of dates signifying different things, and I think Aragorn New Spring is all a part of this. Okay, let's go quickly into the chat. Chris PH, Dreamcasting for Rohan Weber. They've already cast her. I can't remember the actress's name. She looks great. She looks the part, almost exactly how I imagine her. And I have seen her in something, but I cannot remember what it is for the life of me. I'm sure someone in the chat will remind me in a moment, including what her name is. But yeah, they've cast her, and they are filming season 2. So yeah, that's where we're at on that one. Lady Pushkins, wonder what Tolkien would think of George R. R. Martin's world. I think he would admire the craftsmanship, but dislike the world view, would be my take. Quick flick through. I've got another chat. Great Khan here saying the House of Black and White is said to have a weirwood door and an ebony door. Are we certain it's not Shade of the Evening Timber? That would be poetic. It would be poetic. And we're not sure. We just have to go what we've got. We're not told that it's oily looking, which is normally the giveaway for Shade of the Evening stuff, in my view. So probably it's just ivory. Maybe it was something else. Karsnok saying Celtigar, not Celtigar, Círdan, not Círdan. Am I right? Well, yeah. Certainly, Tolkien liked his C's with a hard K sound to them. Okay, I think with that one, let's just quickly remind you of a few things coming up. I'll try and do some kind of. I'm a little bit behind, I know. House of the Dragon episodes 3 and 4. I will do sort of a response video here. Patrons, you did provide me with some thoughts about episode 3, so thank you very much for that. So they're coming up on here. I've got that video about Tyrion, the Lost Tyrion chapter. Very exciting. I enjoyed writing that one. That was quite good fun. And what else? I don't know. I'm thinking of getting into a few more shorts. Let me know what you think. Yeah, I think that's probably enough. Moderators, thank you. You are amazing. Hugely appreciate your good work there. Patrons, again, thank you. I can't do what I do without you. I hugely appreciate it. If you want to watch any of these live streams ad-free, about 3 weeks or so afterwards, then they will go up on In Deep Sleep, which is what you think it is as a channel. It's these designed to help you get to sleep. But for now, if you're watching this on YouTube, back a little bit later, appearing somewhere around here, it's going to be a link to other live streams that I've done. Appearing somewhere around here is a link to my Patreon page, which is the best way to support this channel if you wish to do so. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone, and I shall see you next time.